Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are, or whatever time zone you might happen to be in. We are thrilled to have you with us today. Welcome to Will Work for Food, the New Possibilities Hour. As many of you know, this program, this project was one that was started by Natalie Armstrong Motown in the spring of 2020 in response to the pandemic as a way of being able for the global legal community, dispute resolution community, to be able to give back. And there is no charge for these programs. We just ask that if you are able, that you donate, if you are able to donate to a food bank, either of the speaker's suggestion or of your own choice, that you do so. And then if you would please be so kind as to let us know the amount of your donation, we would be thrilled to add it to our running total since we don't handle the money. But every little bit helps. And the number today, as you know, we announce every morning or every day, every week, the amount of donations about which we've been told so far. And the number today is just amazing. I can see $1 million right there in our near future, but $634,658.93 of donations. So that's maybe 7 or anywhere from 6 to 8 million, 9 million meals, depending on the buying power of the particular food banks. And that is worldwide. We've had food banks that have been the recipient of everyone's generosity from around the world. So thank you all, and please continue with your generous spirit. We're happy to have you here. Today's speaker is someone that I'm thrilled to be able to have with us this week, Zina Saeed, and she is the managing principal and accounting industry leader for let's see, Lemmy. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Zina?
That's
Okay.
right. Thank you.
For Lemmy, it's a division of Epic Insurance Brokers and Consultants. She's based in Chicago, and she serves as the accounting firm practice leader for the Lemmy division. She joined this in 2021. She's been in the insurance industry with most of her time in the London market, I would dare guess, for more than 20 years now. I first met Zina when we were both over in London, and she makes a great host for getting to see from a local's perspective the London market. She has held various positions in claims management, broking, underwriting, um, deep knowledge in the US professional liability area. And her career began at the Lloyd's of London, where she worked for Chubb and Hiscox many years ago. And then she ended up moving over to the professional liability team for WR Berkeley Syndicate in London, and then on and on. It goes from there. She is focused now on accounting firms and is here to talk to us today about the currents emerging, or navigating the currents, excuse me, emerging trends and challenges for the global professional services firm. No matter what the professional service is, I dare say that lawyers, whether you're a lawyer, accountant, engineer, whatever it might be, there are currents and trends that we're all facing. Most of us are probably mediators and arbitrators on this call, and so that's professional service, and we're facing those as well. So Zina has suggested the Central Illinois Food Bank. That almost could be a tongue twister. And any support that you can give to it would be great. Natalie will put the link to that food bank in the chat. And then if you could just let us know the amount of your contribution, that would be great. So without further ado, let me introduce Zina to you here and welcome you. And maybe you can tell us a brief bit about your chosen food bank and why you chose it. And then the floor is yours. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Jean. It's absolutely a privilege to be here. I followed your work and particularly this initiative very closely, and I'm just full of admiration for the success of it and for what you do. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be invited to be here. Thank you. Um, as you can tell from my accent, I do not originate from Central Illinois. However, I recently relocated there. I actually live in Springfield, Illinois, which is about 3 hours south of Chicago. Had never really known about this area before we moved there, but we've been welcomed with open arms into that community. Have had some very interesting experiences learning about the capital of Illinois, and where I believe Lincoln started his career. So that's been fun. And so this is just my way of giving back to the community that has welcomed myself and my family over the past couple of years, and where we've made our home, and we're really, really happy to be there. So this is why I chose this food bank, and I hope you consider supporting it. So thank you in advance for that. A little bit about myself, and thank you, Jean, for your introduction. I'm a lawyer by trade, but really for the past 20 years, I've been a student of professional service firms, accounting firms, law firms, but also have offered services, as have served those firms with respect to risk transfer and risk management. And I've looked at those things from kind of every side of the transaction, be it claims management, be it risk management advice, be it underwriting and providing, insurance to those firms. And now at this point in my career, I'm a broker. And so I represent large professional service firms, mainly large accounting firms based here in the US. And I help them to manage their risk management and risk transfer solutions. So it's been a fantastic ride, and I'm really, really happy to be working amongst this A+ team at Lemmy, a division of Epic. And so what I was looking to do today was kind of give you my perspective on what's happening in the space, the kind of macro landscape, the macro challenges that these firms are facing, but also some more micro ones. Give you my opinion on what that means for those firms, and maybe a little bit of what I would consider to be some practical advice in terms of how they might navigate those challenges. I'd love to keep this interactive, so please jump in with questions, comments, anything you want to open up for debate. I'm open to this going in any direction that would benefit you. So please feel free to interrupt me at any time and let me know what you're thinking. So I think it's important to say that, one of the reasons why I feel so privileged to be in the role that I'm in is because I genuinely believe and have come to understand over the years that I've been doing this, is that professional service firms really do play a very crucial role in the global economy and in society in general, because they provide essential services to enable businesses to operate efficiently, to enable governments and municipalities to navigate certain regulatory restrictions, anything that they might need. And the world is changing very rapidly. And so professional service firms need to continue to adapt to serve their clients effectively, because they need to remain competitive and they need to remain relevant. And so I wanted to focus on kind of an intersection of the multiple factors that are shaping the landscape for these firms, including technological innovations, regulatory changes, evolving client expectations, and again, like I said, maybe offer a little bit of practical advice for firms navigating these complexities. So we'll start off a little bit macro, and the reason for that is because I recently came from Zurich, where I attended a conference that drilled into the geopolitical factors that may be impacting the landscape for a lot of these large firms. And I think the current geopolitical environment is significantly impacting large professional firms in several ways. It's creating both challenges and it's creating both opportunities. So here are some key effects as I see them. Number one, I think the increased regulatory complexity. So the geopolitical tensions that may result in either stricter regulatory environments, especially concerning cross-border transactions, for example, trade policies, sanctions. These changes are really impacting how firms need to navigate compliance, and these changes are particularly adding to operational burdens for firms. So professional service firms, particularly large global firms, really do need to invest even more in enhancing their compliance practices, developing expertise in managing the regulatory landscape. And this might involve investing in dedicated compliance teams in certain jurisdictions, or investing in and utilizing in technological solutions for monitoring regulatory changes. There's also a deep impact in their changes to market access. So trade disputes, geopolitical conflicts, they can really restrict access to certain markets for a lot of these firms, and also alter established trade agreements. So they'll in fact really impact the international operations and client relationships that they have. So they've got to be agile. And I think, agility is something that we'll continue to explore in the presentation here, because they'll need to be agile and adaptive and develop strategies to enter new markets or serve clients in regions that are less affected, perhaps, by geopolitical instability. And they'll need to conduct regular risk assessments of markets that are subject to those risks. And the more quickly these things evolve, the more quickly they'll have to adapt and continually risk assess where they are operating. And then tied to that is the shift in their client demand. So clients are going to be increasingly seeking guidance and advice on navigating geopolitical risks. So there'll be a growing demand for advisory services that address risks associated with sourcing, supply chains, investment strategies, particularly in volatile regions. And so professional service firms can really capitalize on that trend by positioning themselves as thought leaders in risk management, in geopolitical strategy, and providing tailored advisory services to clients grappling with these issues. The one thing we haven't talked about is talent and how all this impacts their people. So talent mobility and workforce challenges. So the geopolitical tensions can lead to restrictions on the labor mobility in the labor market. They might affect firms' ability to either transfer talent across borders or hire talent where they need it. And that also can hinder their access to critical skills and expertise for their global operations. So firms will need to focus on developing local talent and investing in remote work technologies so that they can ensure that flexible and diverse workforce can operate in different parts of the world in varying geopolitical contexts. And then alongside all of this, and alongside everything that we've been transitioning towards over the last few years, is the increased cybersecurity risks that these firms are facing, and in fact, that we're all facing. So heightened geopolitical tensions can escalate the risk of cyber attacks, particularly, and we've seen this develop from state-sponsored actors targeting firms due to their sensitive data and position in their global markets. So these firms have to invest in robust and continue to invest in robust cybersecurity measures, regularly assessing their cybersecurity posture, and invest in employee training on cybersecurity best practices. That really has to be a priority and continue to be a priority. And then finally, I think the supply chain disruption is something that is maybe a little bit underlooked, but certainly something that firms are starting to focus on. So the political instability and conflicts, they can disrupt global supply chains, affecting the ability of firms to provide uninterrupted services and meet their client demands. So they need to think about diversifying their supplier bases and continue to develop more resilient supply chains. That means they're going to need to source from multiple regions, or they need to localize their services where that's feasible. So they need to be able to look at those two strategies in tandem and figure out a way that is the most cost-effective way to address that challenge. And I think that's something that is been underlooked, like I said, and something that the larger firms are starting to focus more and more on. And then I think the one thing that we don't talk about a lot is reputational and ethical considerations, but I do think it's important. Operating in politically sensitive regions can lead to reputational risks. Firms and all professionals have to navigate ethical implications of their engagements and operations in countries that particularly face, for example, human rights issues or certain government instabilities that we may consider are ethically challenged. And so developing and adhering to clear corporate social responsibility guidelines that will enable firms to make informed decisions about where to operate and how to ethically engage with partners and clients. So I'll just pause there and see if there are any questions or comments from that kind of high level background. So I think my conclusion here is really around, the current geopolitical environment. It does represent a complex landscape for large professional service firms. They have to be continuously assessing risks, adapting to strategies, and they need to be proactive in addressing the challenges and capitalizing on emerging opportunities. So it's challenges and it's opportunities at the same time, because their clients are requesting that they do so. And so I think the emphasis on being agile and being compliant at the same time is where I would land. So turning to more of the micro trends that are reshaping the industry, I think very importantly is technological innovations. Digital transformation is something that all of the clients that I talk to, that's at the forefront of their strategic goals at the moment. AI and automation, it's important to emphasize how AI tools can both enhance decision-making processes, like, predictive analytics can forecast market trends based on historical data, but also they can provide challenges in terms of, how do we reallocate human resources? How do we make sure there's a human in the loop? How do we make sure that we're being diligent and testing this technology as it emerges? So embracing AI and automation is no longer optional for these firms. It's essential. It's essential for all professional service firms, I think, and firms that do resist these changes, they do risk becoming obsolete. So I think investing in training programs to ensure that employees are equipped to work alongside new technologies, they understand what they're doing and they understand the why in terms of why the firm is making this investment and why it's important for the evolution of the firm and for the client base. And a phased adaptation approach, I think, is really crucial so that you can help, people can help their employees and their clients ease into the transition. But I don't think this is something that is going to go away anytime soon. I think this is something that is only going to accelerate. And so that's something that's, a lot of the larger firms are super, super focused on. And a lot of the smaller firms are worried about because it's a big investment. I see Mr. Palmer has his hand up. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One, you'll have to put back in one of your older hats on, and the other one more recent. The older one is there are a lot of us in Florida and folks in California where what bothers a big concern is ongoing increases in homeowners rates. And what's happening is Florida is looking to involve the Lloyd's of London types and things like that. And I'd be interested in knowing what trends you might see there. Second question, totally unrelated, is, and it affects both our profession, accountants, contractors, architects, and financial planners. You talked about cybersecurity and concerns about that, but became folks modernizing. What do you see the future of cyber currency and the impact of that with law firms having trust account issues already, and then having clients come to them with thefts and things like that? I realize they're two very different questions, but your background made it such that I had to ask those two.
Sure. So your first question is around homeowners insurance, and I think having so states like Florida needing to be more adaptive in the way that they seek that risk transfer. So by going to Lloyd's of London markets, for example, to try and transfer that risk. And you wanted my take on that. I see that as something that's inevitable. I think that, you know, the insurance market is cyclical and it's reactive to loss ratios, essentially. And so I think when, you know, local markets, domestic markets begin to see that they're continuing to take on that risk transfer as something that's unfeasible, whether it's, you know, whether it's, you know, kind of property insurance or any other type of insurance, you know, you're going to have to look to other markets, either markets that are more specialized, markets that are maybe more diversified, but also markets that have just historically taken on more, you know, more kind of what we would describe as maybe hard to place or complex risks. And so, you know, Lloyd's, my experience of Lloyd's is that they are really a market that will always be sitting and waiting for when they're needed, because when they're needed, they can craft solutions and, you know, price risks accordingly. And so I think that's something that's inevitable, and Lloyd's is a market that will react to that.
Okay.
I think that's going to impact price, but it will also impact terms and conditions. So there may be a price element to the risk as a result of having to go to a market like Lloyd's, but there's also going to be a terms and conditions element. So what was perhaps insured before, or the way it was insured, will likely change. And so that's something to be careful about.
Thank you.
And so the second question was about perhaps cryptocurrency and non-standard forms of currency. I think the way that plays out will depend on how the regulators and the regulatory environment evolves around that space. Because I think professional service firms will always need to be cautious and careful about the advice they give to clients and the type of practice areas they enter into. Similar to the cannabis industry, you know, when states started to legalize cannabis, that we saw, you know, a transition to certain professional service firms offering certain types of services, but they still had to be very aware of, you know, what the federal government had to say about cannabis, how that will work in their state, and so they still have to be super careful about navigating the regulatory environment. So how quickly the regulatory environment develops, I think, will determine the professional service firms and the professional services they're able to provide, or the solutions that they're going to craft for clients.
Thanks.
We caution clients regularly about cryptocurrency in particular. And the reason for that is because it's difficult to transfer the risk of practices around that, because underwriters and their insurers are very, very wary and skeptical about it. And so, you know, we tell our clients that, you know, you have to be very articulate about the services that you're providing, because your underwriters need to understand the risk that they're carrying. And they, you know, underwriters will ask very detailed questions about that. Bob, does that answer your questions?
It does. Thank you.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Zina. I'd like to follow up on Bob's question, and I'm not sure if it's what Bob is really talking about. And I want to focus just where I am in California, because I have seen it's just seemed a wholesale trend in eliminating homeowners insurance, because in California, you know, it's the fires, it's the earthquakes and so on. But what we have seen is this just eliminating. A homeowner gets a notice, we will no longer insure you. They're not even given the opportunity, maybe if a roof needs to be brought up to code or anything. And I don't know if that's the trend you're seeing, Bob, but in tying that into Lloyd's of London, I'm just wondering, is this a trend where these homeowners will in fact have no other options in this country but to seek that kind of coverage?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. I'm not a property and casualty specialist, but what I do know is that where there's need, solutions are often crafted, particularly in the risk transfer environment. And so there will be, professionals working on solutions where there are no solutions to be found domestically. There's a very large risk transfer market outside of the US that serves the US, be that Lloyd's of London, be that Zurich, be that Bermuda, or even emerging markets in the Middle East. So again, there may be solutions, but pricing and terms and conditions might look very different. So I think that will be interesting to watch. But what I've seen is I've seen a couple of cycles now is that something will happen, capacity retracts from a certain area, whether that be homeowners insurance or whether it be professional liability insurance or some other catastrophic cover, capacity contracts somewhere, but somebody else sees that as an opportunity. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Jean.
I have a question here, tying into your people seeing and then seizing opportunities. Look at Lemonade, that insurance company. I mean, that was a new kind of insurance company, and now you see their billboards around Los Angeles anyway. But I wanted to ask you, Zina, you mentioned technology, for small firms, or individual sole practitioners, whether you're in a legal practice or any other sort of professional services, are you seeing many of the ransomware types of cases and, the sending money, the cyber types of related risks, sending money to the wrong place? There was just an article in Law 360 this week about, and I'm reading the headline here, fake, because they weren't real, big law attorney duped exec into wiring $55 million. And so there's a lawsuit over that, and I've seen quite a number of these still with professional service firms.
We have seen a huge uptick in kind of the cybercrime related ransomware type events, but also the cybercrime, I'm actually the CFO of this organization that is your client. There's a new account. We've set up a new account. Can you wire the money over here instead of over there? We're seeing a huge uptick in that. So much so that one of the leading insurers that we have been working with over the years has actually had a real shift in their underwriting appetite for professional service firms in particular, and has really caused us to try and find different solutions, different markets, because of the uptick in ransomware. We partner with Kroll, and they send us their data. And over the past couple of years, they've told us that for cybercrime and ransomware type events, professional service firms are the most targeted out of any other organization. So we have, that's real data, and that they have a lot of information. And so that's, we share that information with our clients because we want them to understand it's not just them, it's all professional service firms, but it's a problem for the whole sector. And it's really, really difficult because the bad actors, they're evolving and they're getting better at what they do at a faster rate than firms are able to train and keep on top of their staff and figure out solutions. And so, and that gap just keeps widening. And so it's a really, really tough position for professional service firms to be in. when they, and we know that it's getting more difficult because cyber application forms are getting longer. There are more supplements. Underwriters want more information. They want to understand. And so firms are having to react and invest very quickly, be more reactive than proactive. And, you know, professional service firms are conservative. They're a conservative group. And so having to react very quickly can often come as counterintuitive to them. So it's been a very tough time for professional service firms because of the way that they've been targeted by bad actors.
Thank you. I think that bears out. I mean, what you're saying is very clear too from the news that comes out. It's always something, it seems like, where some law firm or other professional service type of firm has been targeted in some way, a data breach, not updating, you know, whatever it might be. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. So please do continue to ask questions. I really love this. It's a great way for us to kind of have a more interactive discussion. The point of the presentation that I got to was kind of thinking about more micro trends. We talked about technological innovations, digital transformation. You know, like I said, embracing AI is no longer an option. You know, this is something that firms are going to have to do. They're going to have to invest in. And if they can't afford to invest, they're going to have to think about what that means for the firm in terms of the firm's strategy and evolution. Does that mean they need to think about a merger? Does that mean they need to think about taking investment from a third party? Because they're going to have to make these investments in order to be sustainable and feasible going forward. And tied to that is the issue of remote work technologies. So the shift to hybrid models and the significance of virtual collaboration tools like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, and their effect on client interaction and culture has been huge, very much propelled by the pandemic and the way we worked and things changed over the pandemic. I think it was something that was likely happening anyway, maybe not inside of professional service firms as quickly. So the pandemic has had a real impact on that. And a lot of firms have also been investigating and researching the benefits of asynchronous work. So how can firms maintain productivity and engagement while working separately, not in the same time zones, not having to kind of communicate all the time, but there are also some real benefits to that. And there's been some real interesting research around that too. So firms have adopted remote work. The true success will come from a hybrid model, though, that respects employee preferences for flexibility while maintaining a strong organizational culture. Because as somebody who studied professional service firms my entire career, I've always said, you know, your underwriting partners, the people that sponsor you, they're just sponsoring your culture. The culture of the professional service firm, kind of the beating heart of who the firm is everything, is the key to their success. And so being able to maintain that strong culture, staying true to who the firm is, whilst being virtual, whilst being hybrid, it's a challenge that continues for firms, even though we are, you know, coming out of the pandemic and changing the way we work and settling into the new normal. I do think it's something that they continue to grapple with. You know, how can they help themselves? Regular virtual team building activities, figuring out how do we get together virtually, but how can we communicate just as effectively in a virtual way? Check-ins, but making sure that there's also ways for people to be together in person. There's a real reason for people to be together in person, and trying to find new and exciting ways for people to want to come together. I think we have a comment. Oh, thanks, Anne. So tied to the technology, I think one thing that we're starting to see is a real uptick in client-centric platforms. So there are lots of firms that have developed apps or portals. I call it like the Amazon effect, you know, for clients to access services anytime. So you have this 24/7, you know, ability and personalized service, kind of like your Amazon app. So, an example of that is, some accounting firms are allowing clients to upload documents securely, track the progress of their work in real time. And I think providing an omni-channel client experience like that is really vital going forward, because people have really changed the way that they want to access goods and services. Just even in your personal life, the way that you want to access goods and services, whether it be shopping or even professional services, even the way that you seek medical advice has changed. It's become more virtual. And so clients of professional service firms also now expect that instant access to services and support through whatever medium is most convenient to them. And that can be very different across different jurisdictions, across different parts of the world, across different even age groups. And so that's something that firms have to become very adept at, and personalizing that client experience. So conducting regular client feedback sessions to understand the client needs and to improve service offerings is something that firms are going to have to continually invest in. We've covered technology, we've covered digital transformation. What about regulatory? So I think, the thing here is the only constant is change. Regulations are increasingly complex, increasingly global, and firms are having to invest in compliance solutions to avoid penalties and enhance client trust more and more. So compliance can't just be seen as a kind of a necessary cost anymore, but firms have to really look at it as a value proposition. So firms that excel in compliance can really differentiate themselves in a crowded market. And developing in-house expertise on regulations and compliance early on, providing regular training and updates for their teams can prevent regulatory violations and build client trust. When things go wrong, especially for big firms, it's a problem. It's a reputational risk for them. It's in the press. There are lots of things, and it's just, they do really suffer. And these are even firms that have got deep compliance teams and big bench strength there, but when it goes wrong, it can go really horribly wrong. Accounting firms in particular, they are constantly navigating a changing regulatory landscape. That includes changes from the SEC, the IRS, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, new tax laws, accounting standards. It can be confusing and it can require significant adjustments in their practices. So they need to establish dedicated compliance teams, or they need to designate compliance officers who are responsible for constantly monitoring the regulatory changes and updating the internal policies. And they need to invest in training programs and resources to keep their staff informed about current regulations and emerging developments. And I think the speed of change in the regulatory environment, it kind of looks a little bit like the speed of change in technology. It is just getting faster and faster, and people are having to adapt more quickly. Going back to technology, data security and privacy regulations, there's increasing regulatory scrutiny around data protection like GDPR and CCPA. Accounting firms are having to ensure that their client data is secure and that they're in compliance with privacy regulations that are changing all the time. So they need to implement robust cybersecurity measures, including encryption, access controls, secure data storage solutions. They need to conduct regular audits and assessments of their data security practices, tabletop exercises, because they need to be ahead of identifying those vulnerabilities and addressing them promptly. Again, they need to make sure that their clients trust them. They need to make sure that the data is safe. And what we're seeing amongst our client base is, increased questions about, we're taking on a new engagement, or we're RFPing for a client, and these are the list of things that they're expecting us to do, or these are the list of things that they're expecting us to have in place around their data security. So again, firms are having to be reactive to what's happening in the market. And this is another area where, it really would serve the firms well to try to be more proactive ahead of time, because it's much easier to be able to say we have all of this covered versus, well, we're trying to compete for this client. How can we get there first? And trying to kind of backdoor it in, because it's difficult to understand what you're doing and it just becomes more expensive that way. So what are the risks of non-compliance? So I think the repercussions of non-compliance can be super severe, like I mentioned: legal penalties, financial fines, damages to your reputation. And smaller firms in particular can face risk due to lack of resources to manage these regulatory requirements. So, smaller firms are really, really challenged here because it's becoming more and more onerous and expensive to make sure that you're in compliance with all of these changes. So they need to develop comprehensive risk management frameworks that outlines these policies, these procedures and responsibilities regarding compliance. And that should include regular risk assessments and internal audits. And so they need to leverage technological solutions like compliance management software to streamline the monitoring and reporting and compliance processes. So we are seeing more and more professional service firms leveraging technology to make sure that they're compliant, which I think is a good development. Any questions around compliance and the regulators? And I think, one of the threats here for me that I see is particularly important is that training and employee knowledge gap issue. So how do you ensure that all your employees are knowledgeable about regulations and compliance standards? That can be really daunting challenge, particularly with staff turnover or new regulations. So we're seeing a lot of movement in the market, a lot of staff turnover at the same time. Regulations are changing at an increased pace. And so implementing ongoing training programs that cover regulatory changes more frequently, if you were doing it annually, maybe you need to do it twice a year, 4 times a year, and then utilizing e-learning platforms. So again, going back to technology for flexible and accessible training options, where you can make sure that you're maybe ensuring that you're identifying where there are gaps and you're targeting the part of the staff or the part of the workforce that needs that training, and it's more targeted rather than all across the board. And then also creating a knowledge sharing environment. So you can encourage employees to attend industry seminars, webinars, share insights with the team. And I think maybe I just saw a question about how mediators can help. Mediators are a knowledge sharing resource. Outside of maybe the dispute or the dispute resolution, it's about how is there any kind of proactive way they can be engaged to get ahead of these issues. I think something that I think is really interesting is when clients ask me to kind of do, let's plot out a scenario and investigate all the ways around it. So kind of like we're not in the dispute yet, but if we were, what would it look like and how would we navigate it? I think those kind of exercises can be super useful.
Well, and Zina, for mediators, for example, or arbitrators, but let's just focus it on mediators for the moment. To a certain extent, or maybe completely, they're like vendors, in a sense. They're not part of the law firms, clearly. I mean, of the firms that are hiring them to mediate. So do you see, I mean, as I think about it, I could think of some things, I guess, but ways that then the mediator, whether they're an individual mediator or, a small group, I'm sure the Jamses of the world, have thought of whatever they need to think of, but for the smaller organization or the individuals, ways that they can make a difference either for themselves as the mediators to be more careful or more cautious about the information they receive, but also then maybe as a way to be more comfortable for firms to want to hire them if they have whatever security if the mediator has whatever security might be in place. I mean, that could be marketing as well as service oriented, and certainly states now, Illinois' got BIPA and California's got, our protection thing, and Europe's got its. All these states are putting things into place. So do you have any suggestions there that you would see from an individual or small firm basis?
I think from a small firm basis, whether it's a mediator or any small professional service firm or solo professional service firm, I think a lot of the the solutions, the risk transfer solutions out there available to smaller entities have a lot of risk management built around them. So what might not be something that you're aware of, and we talk to our smaller clients about this, is, your insurance policy has these benefits outside of just transferring the risk. You've got a risk management team that's available to you. You have a hotline that's available to you. You can take advantage of these risk management, these webinars, so really do make sure that you're utilizing everything that's available to you in the product that you're purchasing to transfer your risk that's outside of just transferring the risk. So I'd highly recommend that people look at that, understand that, see what's available to them, and use it. And that's time consuming because you have to go but it is important because there are lots of things that you can take away from those. But also I would say, collaborate. So, have a club, make a club with trusted partners, colleagues, competitors, whereby you can share, swap ideas, or even, kind of like syndicate, the use of a product, or attend, doing some kind of tabletop exercises so that you can show your client base, this is what I'm a small entity, but this is what I do to make sure that I can kind of meet the standards that are required by a larger firm, for example. So there are ways that you can syndicate your efforts, perhaps.
Yeah, well,
Safety in numbers, so to speak.
Yeah, consistent with that, I would just point out to anyone who's interested that if you are an attorney, mediator, or arbitrator, the association, the AAM, Association of Attorney Mediators, you get these alphabets in your head. The Association of Attorney Mediators, which you can Google it, it's based out of Texas, but it's a national organization. As part of the dues, you are receiving a cyber policy, a group cyber policy. So there is that protection there. That's an example, in a sense, of what you were talking about, collaborating for at least insurance protection.
So I think I'm conscious of time, and I'd quite like to move on to the competitive landscape for professional service firms. So we're seeing intensifying competition and increased competition from both traditional firms and new entrants, including technology companies, for example, that offer consulting services, and alternative legal service providers. A little bit tied to that Amazon effect I was talking about. And so this competition puts pressure on pricing, margins, and need for a kind of a unique value proposition to attract and retain talent and clients. So this intensifying competition presents several specific challenges for firms, but these challenges can be perhaps mitigated in a number of different ways. So if we're talking about an increasing number of competitors, so the professional service sector is witnessing an influx of both traditional firms and new entrants. We're seeing tech companies, boutique consultancies, and it just leads to a crowded marketplace. So conducting regular market analysis to identify the competitive dynamics and emerging players in the market, and focus on differentiating your firm through your unique value proposition, whether that's specialized expertise, innovative service delivery, or exceptional client service. What is it that makes you you? That's something that you can use to navigate, and just being aware of what else is out there, so that when you're talking to clients, you can talk to them. We know the competitive landscape. We know the people that we're competing against. I think clients always find that really refreshing when firms go to them and say, we understand the environment that we're playing in. What about pressure on pricing? So as competition intensifies, there's going to be a demand to lower fees or seek out competitors who offer similar services at better value. And so what can you do instead of competing solely on price? You've got to emphasize the quality and outcomes of your services. So develop pricing models that reflect the value delivered. So value-based pricing instead of the standard hourly rates. That's something that we've been talking to clients about for a number of years now. And also consider tiered pricing packages that cater to different and diverse client segments. At the same time that there's this market pressure, clients are increasing their expectations for innovation. So they're increasingly expecting more innovative solutions. They want those solutions to provide more competitive advantages, and that can really put pressure on firms to keep pace with developing trends and technologies. So there needs to be a culture of innovation fostered within the organization by encouraging creative problem solving and continuous improvement, to engage in regular brainstorming sessions, collaborative initiatives with other firms. Some firms collaborate with their clients. If they have a client who's a tech company, they start collaborative efforts with that tech company to provide solutions that they can perhaps use inside their firm, but then also monetize to other clients. So thinking a little bit outside the box and leveraging feedback from clients to identify and develop innovative solutions to meet evolving needs. This isn't a trend that's going to go away. Clients are going to expect they want a one-stop shop, but they want it to be, offering a unique and a unique value proposition. It's a conundrum for a lot of firms, but firms that do it well are the firms that really leverage their client relationships to try and kind of find solutions in step with those clients. And then, highlighting expertise. So in a really noisy market, many firms are vying for attention. It can be difficult for an individual firm to showcase their expertise and establish credibility. So investing in thought leadership initiatives, publishing white papers, hosting webinars, delivering presentations at industry conferences, positioning your firm as an authority in a critical area of expertise can help attract clients and build trust in the brand. And then retaining existing clients. There's always a higher client churn when the market is noisy, but as clients explore alternatives, continuing to build, and invest in your existing clients and strong client relationships, regularly soliciting their feedback, working to address any issues promptly, trying to be proactive about what their needs might be, but also things like implementing loyalty programs or incentives for long-term clients, whether that be from a pricing perspective or other types of incentives that will make it more attractive for them to stay in your firm. As we talk to clients who are professional service firms, the thing that we hear the most about, and we've heard the most about over the last 2 years, is difficulties in talent acquisition. So, intense competition also leads to talent acquisition issues. Top tier professionals and skilled workers are like gold. And so, building a strong employer brand by showcasing your company's culture, values, career development opportunities, and offering attractive compensation packages and professional development programs is really, really important. The accounting firm industry in particular is experiencing issues here. There's the lowest number of people registering for accounting majors in universities than there ever has been. And that is something that the accounting industry is super, super focused on right now. How do we attract people to the accounting industry? Starting salaries has something to do with it, but there's also more to it than that. How do we make it, for want of a better word, a sexier proposition to want to be an accountant? So how do we make sure people understand what it is that we do outside of completing tax forms? And so there's been a real push within the industry to try and make, even using social media. Some firms have been doing high school internships, but using platforms like TikTok. And it's been really interesting to see that push, the industry coming together, recognizing it has an industry problem and really trying to innovate and find solutions for that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then what is the thing that we're all dependent on? And that's our clients. So changing client demographics is a real challenge. As client demographics shift, these firms have to adapt their marketing, their engagement strategies, and they have to connect with the preferences and expectations of a younger and tech-savvy clientele. And how is that best to do that? It's by leveraging your younger and tech-savvy professionals. And so making sure that those younger professionals are really helping you understand what it is that your client and your client of the future is going to look like and want and need. So managing your strategy by investing in a digital marketing strategy that resonates with younger audiences, like social media campaigns, engaging content marketing, user-friendly websites that, people enjoy using. And additionally, leveraging technology to enhance your client experience and provide kind of on-demand solutions, 24/7 solutions. So, I think that's where it comes back to. It comes back to the client. How is the client evolving? What does the client need? And how is the client becoming more digital, more global? Clients are now becoming citizens of the world rather than citizens of a place, whether that's just because of the way that we're all connected, or whether that's just because, of the global political environment. That's a shift that will continue. Understand your client and understand who your firm is. I think the final thing that I'll draw attention to, and something that's been in the press and commented on quite widely, is particularly for accounting firms, is the injection of private equity capital into the accounting firm industry. So the way that these firms are owned is changing dramatically. More and more firms are taking or considering taking private equity investments, which is really changing the way that firms are owned and operated, but it's also going to accelerate the growth of these firms and the consolidation of the market. It's going to have a long and lasting impact on the way that professional services look in 10 years' time versus today. So are we going to see more and more, or fewer and fewer, but very large firms, and less boutique firms? My view of the world is that where things like that change, there's always like a reaction. It happened in the law firm space. As law firms, consolidated and got bigger, there were partners, there were specialists that still wanted that boutique, that still wanted to offer that boutique solution. And so there will be offshoots. But while that's all changing, it's going to lead to a flux and a reorg that's going to have a lasting impact. So I'll end there and take any final questions. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Well, thank you so much, Zina. This has been fascinating. With litigation financing, we're seeing differences in how cases can get settled or not, perhaps. The world is changing. It changes every day, right? It doesn't stand still. So thank you. And I do want to add one thing to the introduction that I should have said in the beginning. And thank you for telling us you were a lawyer. I should have mentioned Zina holds an honors degree, not just a regular degree, but an honors degree in law from the University of London, and then did a postgraduate diploma in legal practice from the College of Law in London as well. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being here. Any contribution that you can make to the Central Illinois Food Bank would be greatly appreciated, or any food bank. So again, I like to say, feed your mind while feeding the world. So next week, same time, same place, different speaker. And thanks so much, Zina. We really appreciated your being here today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.